Chairman Barletta, Madam Hoffman, your testimony notes that the Department's research and development activities with respect to developing space transformer components, what is the cost to manufacturers when we're making these alternative components, and has a domestic manufacturer been identified so that we can ensure that there is no disruption to its prior usage?
So thank you very much for the question. Transformers are a very critical component to the electric sector that was, as was stated in the testimonies and some of the conversations earlier. With respect to transformers, the price of a transformer ranges anywhere between $5 million to $10 million. And so these are significant components. So what do we need to do as we look forward? What is our research program, and what are the activities looking for dealing with the transformer issues? Is first of all looking at the spare components and the spare transformers that industry has, and then industry is looking at having spare capacity on their system. We're also looking at how do we develop the next generation transformer, which might be a transformer you have the ability to produce more quickly and also have more standardization and flexibility. So that includes in our research component the development of power electronics and hybrid transformers. Our 2017 budget request has a very strong program looking at transformers, which is about $10 million, in which we're going to look at developing the next generation transformers, as well as doing testing of transformers to make sure we understand any vulnerabilities that may exist.
Thank you. Administrator Fugate, in the event of a widespread outage, what are FEMA's plans for communicating with citizens on response and recovery efforts when there is essentially zero electricity?
Not much different than what we have faced in other significant outages. We have a variety of tools. First of all, within the emergency alert system, the radio stations, TV stations, many of that have emergency power, TV stations, partner radio stations, we can get signals in. And in addition, if we lose a transmitter, and this will be something that we will be looking at in Oregon during the Cascadia, it's not uncommon that you're going to lose radio and TV stations in the area of impact. But we work with the FCC for the non-impacted stations to increase power to get signal back in. That's why we continue to encourage people have that battery-operated radio. That's why we encourage the idea of FM chips and cell phones, because we can get signals in from the outside, but people need to receive it to get the information. But part of this is going to be where the information is coming from. We are going to be working through the governor's office, because governors and their teams are going to be the best information at the local level. Our job really on the federal side is to provide the backup and tools required. And we're prepared to work with the FCC and broadcasters to get signal from the outside. In addition, we have gone as far, and we did this in the Sandy response, bring in satellite communications and set up Wi-Fi in some of the areas that have lost some of the cellular communications. But we have another backup, and self-disclosure, I am an amateur radio operator. But I think sometimes the more we look at the complexity of our risk, we forget that we have some very resilient systems that aren't part of government, but they oftentimes are the last thing running when everything else has failed. So we look from everything from our systems and satellite technology, working with non-impacted stations, how to broadcast in, amateur radios are all part of that. But it's important that people take the steps to be able to get the information when we can get the signal in. And that's why it may seem very passé in an area of streaming everything that a battery-powered radio may be that lifeline and communication link to get information, because we have seen even in a large scale like Katrina, stations outside the area could broadcast in, but you had to have a way to receive the information.
And lastly, Madam Durkovich, have our most critical transformers and substations within the bulk power system been identified so that we have a clear comprehension of system dependencies and even cascading impacts from a widespread power outage, regardless of the cause?
Thank you very much for that question, Ranking Member Carson. We work very closely with the utility owners, with our partners at DOE, as well as NERC and FERC, to understand the most critical aspects of the electric grid. We have a number of programs that we leverage to help assess the vulnerabilities of these particular assets and to work with owners and operators to help enhance the security and resilience, to provide recommendations. But equally important, as you will hear later from Jerry Cawley, who is the President and CEO of NERC, we have a series of standards that are intended to guide the security of some of these most critical assets. Increasingly, within my office, we are working to better understand the dependencies and interdependencies on some of these critical energy assets, to be able to visualize what a outage is, the impacts it is going to have to other key lifeline sectors, and to be able to provide that information as leaders, to include Administrator Fugate and those of the utilities are working to get power restored. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you. The chair recognizes Mr. Meadows for 5 minutes.